Major Burns is out for LSU in the Texas Bowl, so how do the Tigers replace him? Let's talk about it. Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe, as I tell you every day. One of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you for that. Major Burns won't play for LSU in the Texas Bowl. So what do the Tigers do to replace him? I'll get to that in just a brief second. But I want to talk a little bit about Major Burns and his contributions to the LSU football program, because they are checkered, to put it bluntly. The Tigers on Saturday were in Houston at 11 a.m. Central Time, going through their first bowl practice. They traveled to Houston on Friday. On Saturday morning, had their first bowl practice there at the University of Houston, and reporters there noticed that Burns was not at practice, and we learned subsequently that Major Burns is not with the team and will not play in the Texas Bowl. So when you look defensively at who will and won't be there for LSU, more players will than won't. Savion Jones and Braden Swinson have opted in. Greg Penn, the number 18 jersey middle linebacker, is in. Your cornerbacks are in. Zy Alexander, of course, your senior, is there. Now, Sage Ryan is transferred to Ole Miss. Major Burns, as we learned here, won't play. But by and large, your defense is going to be there. JVR Suggs, a rotational piece on the defensive line, won't play. But by and large, your defense is going to be there. So again, I want to talk about how the Tigers replace Major Burns against Baylor. We'll get to that in a second. But as I was thinking about it, I think there's primarily three ways that I'm going to remember Major Burns during his time at LSU. One is the neck injury. In his first season at LSU, Major Burns suffered a neck injury. Remember, in 2020, the COVID year, he was a freshman at Georgia, came to LSU in 2021. He actually started that game in the Rose Bowl against UCLA, oddly enough. What a long journey it's been for Major Burns at LSU. But the neck injury, which was very scary, was a reminder how fleeting everyone's football careers can be. But Burns came back that season and ended up getting back. It was an injury against Mississippi State. He came back for the Alabama game that year, ended up starting in the SEC championship game and in the bowl game against Purdue. So great resilience there by Major Burns. Early in the 2024 season also, there was a video and a post-game interaction on the field with Major Burns and Blake Baker's family, his young children. And I illustrated that because it was a stark contrast to what happened at the end of 2023. Remember, LSU played in the ReliaQuest Bowl, and guys like Mekhi Wingo, who had an abdominal injury, came back to play in the bowl game. When so many guys opt out of bowl games, there's a veteran leader who came back from surgery to play in a bowl game. And after the game on the field, then defensive coordinator Matt House was trying to go congratulate the guys, and they all just sort of gave him a cold shoulder. And when you contrast that from players ignoring their defensive coordinator to less than a calendar year later, there's a fifth-year senior in Major Burns who's on the field post-game dapping up and playing with Blake Baker's young kids. It's such an illustration of the culture difference from Matt House to Blake Baker. I thought Major Burns was a key part of that. And the other is something Brian Kelly said after the Ole Miss game. Now, I'm going to play this for you, and you'll probably remember it. But obviously, the Ole Miss game was LSU's signature win of the 2024 season, right? A disappointing loss to start the season against USC, and it didn't look good in September after that. But you stacked a couple of wins there, what turned out to be a really impressive win on the road against South Carolina. And then you beat UCLA and South Alabama. You had your open date and you played Ole Miss. And you beat Ole Miss in a dramatic game that went to overtime. Well, the Monday after, in Brian Kelly's Monday press conference, he was asked sort of about buy-in, right? Buy-in defensively from this team. And he was asked big picture about buy-in, but he mentioned Major Burns specifically. Here was that soundbite.
Major's the easy pinata out there. Everybody likes to take a shot at Major Burns. Major's playing a position that requires a lot of run fits that, Harold Perkins had, right? He's really playing in a role where he has to run fit. And you have to trust that teaching. And it was, in my opinion, the first time where Major just trusted it. He just trusted, that's where I'm supposed to be, I'm going to go do it. And the success that he had was he just believes that what he's told to do is going to affect the outcome of the play. And he's a really good example of that and just trusting it. And he probably had his best game because of it. Now, the kid makes a great catch. Those things happen. We're going to move on to the next play. But he's a great example of somebody trusting the teaching that he's getting, and he had great success because of it.
It's really interesting to hear that. One of the ways that I'll always remember Major Burns during his time at LSU. Do you wish he'd play in this bowl game? Sure. I don't know that Major Burns is a draftable prospect. He's probably an undrafted free agent, camp invite type guy at the next level. And maybe he finds a spot somewhere on an NFL roster. I don't know how likely that is, but all that to say, it's a little surprising that he won't play in this bowl game, but maybe trying to avoid injury. I guess I could maybe understand it. But I think the reality with Major Burns is he's not a great college football player. He's not going to be remembered as a great player. But he was a team guy and a career guy. From Madison Prep in Baton Rouge, he was an Under Armour All-American, the number 11 safety in the country, a top 200 player nationally. He goes to Georgia after one season, transfers back to LSU, became the starter at safety in fall camp, started that opener against UCLA, like we mentioned in the Rose Bowl, started the first 5 games of the season. And then as a sophomore in Brian Kelly's first year, started 5 games, played in 9, had missed 5 games due to that neck injury, but came back. And it was one of the things about Major is just, there's so many times he could have left and he didn't. He stayed, he stuck it out, he persevered. Started 13 games at safety in 2023, led the team in tackles with 93. Look, that was the worst defense in the history of the program. But, his interception pick 6 in the fourth quarter against Missouri sealed that win. That 17-yard pick 6 sealed the win. You look at 2024 for Major Burns, the first month of the season, like we've talked about plenty, LSU was sort of finding roles and what they were going to do. They were rolling a lot of guys in that secondary. And when they got to that Ole Miss game, they had identified their veterans, and Harold Perkins was injured, and Major Burns settled at the star position for the rest of the season instead of like a natural safety position, a free safety position. But he had 47 tackles on the season, 4.5 TFLs, 1.5 sacks. He forced a fumble. He was a productive player. Major Burns ended up playing in 39 games at LSU with 33 starts. He made over 200 tackles, 11 TFLs, 2.5 sacks, a couple of picks. So he was not a great player for you, but he was a productive player. And you heard Brian Kelly talk about that Ole Miss game. He's not far off. If you look at Pro Football Focus, Major Burns graded out this season by Pro Football Focus at a 58.1. That was the lowest grade among defensive starters. Okay, it was not good. It was actually the lowest season grade of his entire career, going all the way back to his true freshman season back in 2020 at Georgia. His run defense grade was a 53. His pass defense, his coverage grade was a 58. His tackling, was a 56. His tackling grade was a 56. His run defense grade was a 53. His pass rush grade was an 84. That's actually where he excelled, which gives you great confidence about Harold Perkins being in that star role next year, taking over that. If Major Burns was that effective as a pass rusher in that role, what will Harold Perkins be next year? But all that to say, Major Burns just wasn't a great player for you. But as Brian Kelly said, his best game was against Ole Miss, and it's true. It was his highest grade by PFF at a 67.5. Now against Vandy, he did grade out at a 68, but he only played 24 snaps against Vandy. He played 84 snaps against Ole Miss. So he played the full game and played his best game in the biggest win for LSU. And you hope the best for Major Burns. But now LSU has got to replace Major Burns in this bowl game. And it's going to be interesting how they replace him because Sage Ryan, who played free safety for you, is gone. Jordan Gilbert is back, who played to play in this bowl game, who started this season at strong safety for you. And Major Burns is now gone, who played the star position for you. So very likely what you'll see is Jordan Gilbert play the strong safety spot where he's played all season. And I think you'll see Deshaun Spears, play in that free safety role. And, Deshaun Spears is someone who, since fall camp, I, here and everywhere, have touted as a really talented young guy who I thought by the end of the season might actually take over the starting role. But, he's a guy that was rotating a ton in the beginning of that season as they were rolling guys in and out. But when they got to the Ole Miss game after that first bye, and Brian Kelly said, hey, look, we got to decide who are the guys we can count on. Ultimately, they settled on the veterans. You saw Gilbert Ryan play safety. You saw Stamps and Alexander play corner, and you saw Major Burns play the star position. And so the younger guys like Spears and Toviano and PJ Woodland just didn't play as much. To illustrate it, when you look at Deshaun Spears' snap counts, only 2 snaps against USC in the opener, but then 28, 44, 37, 37 against South Alabama. And again, after that, like Brian Kelly said, they were done rolling guys in and out. They needed to decide. They went with the veterans. The rest of the way, 3 snaps against Ole Miss, 5 against Arkansas, 13 against A&M, 8 against Alabama, and 1 against Vanderbilt. So you're talking about after that, 30 snaps the rest of the season. After the South Alabama game, Deshaun Spears played 30 snaps. Snaps. Not 30 snaps the rest of the season. They just went veteran. Well, this is an opportunity now for a guy like Deshaun Spears who's going to have to start. He's going to have to start and play this full game for LSU. I'd also say the same for Javon Toviano. And it's interesting because Brian Kelly did say during this bowl prep that they've moved Toviano to safety. Well, if you've moved Toviano to safety, then who plays the star role in this bowl game? And I don't know the answer to that. Toviano would make the most sense because he's played a lot of there during the season, at least in practice and things like that. He's only played 49 snaps on the entire season, but he's practiced at the star. The other option you have is you could go to a true 4-3 defense and play with 3 linebackers instead of a 4-2-5 with the hybrid star role. And we did see LSU down the stretch play more games in a 4-3 because you were facing teams like Oklahoma and Vanderbilt who were going to be north and south, more traditional run style teams where you had to be physical at the point of attack. I'll remind you that while West Weeks has already played 4 games, can't play another if he wants to maintain his red shirt, you can play in the bowl game and not have it count against your eligibility. So in theory, you could play Greg Penn, Whit Weeks, Devon Keys, West Weeks, all as a rotation on the interior in a true 4-3 and just not play the star if Major Burns isn't going to be there. My guess is that's what LSU is going to do. If you're committed to moving Toviano to safety, then you go with that look. The asterisk is, they went to that 4-3 role against Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, Florida late in the season. But Baylor's a team that's going to spread you out. They're going to spread you out, and that's when you'd rather have that star position on the field, but you may just not have the personnel to do it. The good news for LSU is get a month. Get a month to get ready for it. My guess is they've known now, and media hasn't seen practice until now, they've known Major Burns wouldn't play. So hopefully they've spent this month getting ready to play this game in likely a traditional 4-3 defensive set. But we'll find out for sure on Tuesday when they go out there and line it up and tee it up and kick it off and line up for the first snap what they're going to do. But what we know is they won't have Major Burns in this game. You're likely going to see, no Major Burns and no Sage Ryan, you're likely going to see more of Deshaun Spears and likely Javen Toviano as well when LSU plays Baylor. All right, it is Locked on LSU, your team every day. A little basketball note to wrap up when we come back. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That has happened to millions of people. You have a few subscriptions you didn't realize you were paying for, and Rocket Money makes it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app. It helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending. It helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. We are counting down to LSU and Baylor Tuesday out in Houston in the Texas Bowl as LSU will wrap up the 2024 football season on New Year's Eve. We'll keep counting you down to that. But LSU Hoops will be back on the floor on Sunday at the Maravich Center, the final non-conference game for LSU, and they'll take on Mississippi Valley. The Mississippi Valley Delta Devils are, quite honestly, one of the worst teams in all of college basketball. We like to point out the net rankings. And remember, there are 364 teams that play Division I college basketball. Mississippi Valley is 364th out of 364 in the net. They are quite literally the worst team in Division I. How bad are they? LSU is a 38.5-point favorite over Mississippi Valley in this game at the Maravich Center. LSU's got a 5-game home winning streak. They'll try to extend that to 6. Tigers are 8-0 on their home court. LSU is scoring 82 a game and has outscored its opponents in its wins by 13.3 points per game. Mississippi Valley 0-10 on the road. They're giving up 83 a game. LSU shoots 46 from the field. Mississippi Valley allows 50% to its opponents. They allow their opponents to make 50% of their shots from the field, and Mississippi Valley averages just 51 points a game. They are an atrocious basketball team. There's not a whole lot to talk about. LSU's 8-2 in their last 10, averaging 81 points a game. Mississippi Valley's 1-9, averaging 51 points a game. You add all that up, it's how you end up with a 38-point spread. For LSU, the crux here is you want to go out and play a clean game because this is your last pre-conference opportunity. Because after this, your next time out is January the 4th against Vanderbilt as you open conference play. And there are no layups, if you'll forgive the basketball pun, in the SEC. Vanderbilt may feel like a layup. They're thinking the same about LSU. Vandy is 11-1 right now. And after that, you go on the road to Missouri, who is right there with LSU at 10-2. And then you're at Ole Miss, which is a ranked basketball team at 11-2. And then Ole Miss is 16th in the country. Then you're home against number 23 Arkansas. Then you're at number 13 A&M. Then you're at number 5 Alabama. Then you're home against number 2 Auburn. You understand my point? Like, the gauntlet is coming. And you've got to be able to win those first couple of games in conference play because you start a streak of 5 consecutive games against ranked opponents that you're going to have to find a way to scratch out a win here and there. Otherwise, you run the risk of plummeting in the conference standings and not being able to dig yourself out and get to the conference tournament. Your net's going to be fine because your strength of schedule is going to be high. But this is your last opportunity. You're at home against Mississippi Valley. You're going to win the game. It's not going to be competitive, but you have to go play a clean basketball game and continue to figure out minutes and rotations and let guys get comfortable and confident. Because when you go play Vanderbilt on January the 4th at home, there at the Maravich Center at Dale Brown Court, you got to win that game. Like, I don't talk much about must wins until there are literal must wins. But when you look at what you have, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Bama, Auburn, Ole Miss again, Arkansas again, Oklahoma again, Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Texas A&M. You have 13 ranked opponents in conference play. 13 of your 18 conference games are against ranked teams. You have got to win a home game against Vanderbilt. So this is your last opportunity for a tune-up. Go get it. Okay, that's going to do it for us here on today's episode of Locked on LSU. If you're new, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.